Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Off the Dome podcast. It is season 3, episode 16. It's been a very eventful week of basketball. I really have no intention of drawing out this intro long at all because it's Sunday. I'm recording this on Sunday, and the amount of amazing basketball that I've seen today alone is genuinely ridiculous. I mean, I can't believe some of the stuff that I've seen today alone. I mean, if you're watching this a few days from now, this is Sunday. Jason Tatum dropped 54, I think it was. Jokic had, I think, the best performance of any player this season. Durant went off. Brandon Ingram went off. The Suns and Bucks team was crazy. I mean, it was insane. I'm just going to get right into it real quick. These are the topics I want to talk about. And the first thing that I want to get into, the first thing I will be getting into, is that the playoff atmosphere is here. The playoffs haven't started yet. The playoffs are like a month away, a month and a half away. But the playoff atmosphere, especially in the buildings of really good playoff teams, it's fucking here. It's here, and I can't wait to get to talk about that. The next one is the Phoenix Suns. I'm rocking with the Phoenix Suns recently. I said it's been a wide open playoff race all year long last episode, and I still say that. And I said that in the playoffs, you don't really know who's going to come out of each conference. But I'm very high on the Phoenix Suns right now, and it's interesting. I'm getting high on the Suns as I see them playing without Chris Paul, without Devin Booker in the case against the Milwaukee Bucks, without Cameron Johnson as well, a guy who's really been picking it up recently. The third thing is James Harden. I talked about him a little bit last episode. I said that I think it can work, and 4 games into the James Harden experiment, yeah, Harden definitely fits in Philadelphia. There's no doubt about it that James Harden and Joel Embiid, it's a lethal duo that any team that will go up against them in the playoffs, they're going to have their hands full with James Harden and Joel Embiid, and then that fucking guy, Tyrese Maxey, you never know when he'll pop off for 35. And I want to get into the Boston Celtics. Listen, man, last episode I called the Boston Celtics a dark horse contender. They're not a dark horse contender. They're contending just as much as any other team in the NBA right now. I honestly believe that, especially in the Eastern Conference, they will cause havoc. But the thing with the East is there are a lot of genuine contenders, teams that you could really see going all the way this year. And if one of them gets knocked out in the first round, that's not even that big of a surprise. Like if Boston goes home early or if Chicago goes home early, the East is so stacked that I can't say I'm not shocked. I really can't, which just talks, I mean, it just kind of shows how stacked the Eastern Conference is. And maybe if there's time, I want to get into the Pelicans this year because the Pelicans have been coming on recently, and they're in a spot where they can play spoilers. They can get hot in a play-in game and knock the Lakers out or knock a team out that's in the playoffs right now. You never know what's going to happen with the New Orleans Pelicans. They might even get into the playoffs with the way they've been balling out recently, getting big wins against big teams. First things first, though. I almost said the playoffs are here. That's how crazy the stadiums have been recently. The playoff atmosphere is here. It is here. If you haven't seen a playoff game ever in your life and you turned on the Boston Celtics versus Brooklyn Nets game Sunday when Tatum dropped 54, Kevin Durant dropped, I think, 4, or he dropped like 38 or something like that. That game right there, that was a playoff environment. That is not a regular season environment. That was an insane game. The playoffs are here, and especially for really good contending teams that are hot right now, you step foot in that stadium, it is hectic as shit. It is. That TD Garden was bumping. I watched some of the Phoenix Suns games, Milwaukee Bucks games. When those two teams are playing at home, it is playoff loud, playoff noise in the regular season, which means come playoff time it's going to be even crazier. It's going to be even louder than normal because the door is so wide open. When I'm watching the Miami Heat play at home, the Chicago Bulls play at home, the Utah Jazz, it's that playoff atmosphere. It really is, and we're seeing it coming. It's coming all around the league right now, and I'm loving it. That's what I love most about the playoffs is the fans and their involvement. I was watching the Denver Nuggets today when Nikola Jokic was going crazy, and they were in that building. Just the tension was there, and that's the thing. That's why I love having fans in attendance when we had the bubble. a couple years ago, it didn't really feel like it was a playoff situation. It didn't feel normal, which obviously there's no fans in attendance, but fans, especially in the playoffs, are perhaps my most favorite thing about the playoffs, just the energy. You can feel it through the TV screen as well. Any of you guys who've ever watched the playoffs, not just basketball or not just NBA, you watch March Madness, you watch Major League Baseball playoffs, you go overseas, soccer, football playoffs, NFL playoffs. You can feel the energy inside the stadium through your TV screen. You can see it. You can feel it. And it's coming here, and especially like I said, fans can taste the playoffs. They know it's right around the corner, and they can feel their teams. A lot of these different fan bases can feel their teams going on long playoff runs. I mean, you'd be damned if you can find a Milwaukee Bucks fan that doesn't think that they're going back to the NBA Finals this year. You'd be damned if you can find a Phoenix Suns fan that doesn't think that they're going to win it all this year. A Chicago Bulls fan that don't think that they're going to the finals. A Miami Heat fan, the same thing. Golden State Warrior fan, it's the same thing all around the league. There's fan bases that are getting more and more hype as we're getting closer and closer to the playoffs. And shit, I mean, this is what I said a couple weeks ago. After the All-Star break, the rubber meets the road. And we're starting to see the real superstars shine. We're starting to see the real teams shine because there's not a lot of room for error. One bad defensive rotation, one bad play, and you lose the game. And that's what I really love about the playoffs. Next up, the Phoenix Suns. I want to get on the Phoenix Suns real quick. This might be a hot take, but you know what? I'm going to say it anyway. I guess you could say this is my first. I obviously made my preseason NBA Finals predictions, my preseason NBA championship predictions, where I picked the Brooklyn Nets to beat the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals, which looking back, obviously you have 20/20 vision in hindsight. Probably won't happen, but at the time, I don't think it was that bad of a pick. But this is since the preseason prediction, this is now my first official championship prediction. What I'm seeing right now out of the Phoenix Suns, without Devin Booker, without Chris Paul, without, in the case of the game against the Milwaukee Bucks, Cameron Johnson, I'm picking the Phoenix Suns to win the NBA championship in 2022. I think that come June, Chris Paul will have himself that elusive NBA championship ring. Now, what I will preface is, I'll say this real quick though, a fully healthy Phoenix Suns team is winning the championship this year. There is no team that can stand in its way. I think a fully healthy Suns team throughout the playoffs will walk through the Western Conference. I don't want to hear nothing about the Golden State Warriors or the Memphis Grizzlies or the Denver Nuggets. A fully healthy Suns team can beat them. Draymond Green or no Draymond Green. All right? Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. or no Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. I don't care. I think the Suns will... I'm not trying to say they'll sweep their way through the playoffs, but nothing more than 6 games. Honestly, this Suns team is something else. I'm watching Phoenix against the Milwaukee Bucks, who don't have three of their best players in Cam Johnson, Paul, and Booker, and they're holding their own. They were down by 4 with like a minute left. They were there. Guys like Jay Crowder can hit shots. DeAndre Ayton can step up in big moments. Mikal Bridges as well, offense and defense. Mikal Bridges is amazing. And what I love most, or what I like to do as well, what I love most about the Phoenix Suns is that they have multiple guys that at the end of the game can create their own shot and get buckets. Because in the playoffs, that's what matters. That's one of the reasons why I don't think the Miami Heat will win the NBA championship this year, or I guess the only reason why I don't think the Miami Heat will win an NBA championship this year is because when I look at their roster, I don't see that guy that can consistently get you buckets game in and game out down the stretch, last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter, overtime kind of beat. And the reason why I say consistently game after game is because Jimmy Butler can get that done for you 2 out of 4 games. Butler can be that guy for you half the time. Because let's be real, Butler is more of a defensive player. He's more of a team player. He's not going to be the guy that can get to anywhere on the floor and knock down shots. When I look at Phoenix, I see a guy like Devin Booker who can get that shot. But then the thing is, too, I can see a guy like Chris Paul who can create that shot. All right, Chris Paul's not going to he's not going to drain a three-pointer, normally, but he can hit those mid-range shots. Chris Paul will get to where he wants to go, and he'll hit those shots. And if he doesn't, he can create room and space for other players. And the Suns have a lot of guys who can hit big clutch shots and who have had to hit big clutch shots. Mikal Bridges is one of them. Cam Johnson is one of them. And the main man, a guy that I've really started to fall in love with, Jay Crowder. He was going to play a big role for the Phoenix Suns in the playoffs. I'm very excited to see what Jay Crowder can do. And that's really my take on the Phoenix Suns. A fully healthy Suns team should win the NBA championship this year, and I'd like to see that happen. I'm cheering for the Phoenix Suns, I think, right now. I like Phoenix. I like the Philadelphia 76ers as well with James Harden. And honestly, if the Suns and 76ers meet in the NBA Finals, man, that would honestly, I would hate that so much because I want James Harden and Chris Paul to both get an NBA championship so badly. They're two of my favorite players in the NBA. They're two players that I've grown up watching and admiring, and I've seen each of them go crazy and have insane performances. Both James Harden and Chris Paul have made me just shake my head in disbelief on how good they were. I remember watching James Harden torch the Golden State Warriors, hitting a big clutch game-winning shot against Draymond Green back in the day. I remember watching them both together on Houston, damn near winning the NBA championship had it not been for a Chris Paul injury. They've given me so much excitement and happiness throughout my life, and to see them pit against each other to win that one NBA championship in a year where it seems like if James Harden's going to win an NBA championship, there's no better year to do it than this year. If Chris Paul's going to win an NBA championship, there's no better year to do it than this year. That's why if Harden and Chris Paul meet in the NBA Finals, I'll be torn. I'd rather no one wins, honestly. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of thing. I wish they could share the ring because that would be, first of all, don't get me wrong, that'd be a finals for the ages. But it'd just be tough to see one of those guys go home without an NBA championship. At the same time, though, it'd be nice to see one of those guys win the NBA championship. That's my Phoenix Suns. The Suns are the team. And I just preface again, fully healthy Suns are going to win the NBA championship this year. They definitely can. Unfortunately, Chris Paul gets hurt every single year in the playoffs. This year, he's gotten hurt a little bit before the playoffs, which could be good. We get the Chris Paul injury out of the way early. That way, in the playoffs, he can be healthy. Maybe that's what we're doing here, Phoenix. Because Chris Paul, I hate this notion when people say, Stephen Curry owns Chris Paul in the playoffs or the Warriors own Chris Paul in the playoffs. No one owns Chris Paul in the playoffs. I'm going to tell you who owns Chris Paul in the playoffs. Chris Paul owns himself in the playoffs. The only person to ever beat Chris Paul in the playoffs, other than Giannis Antetokounmpo last year, has been injuries. That's it. It's injuries. Most of the time to Chris Paul. Sometimes to Blake Griffin, back in the Lob City Clippers day. But I don't think, Chris Paul is not a playoff choker or anything like that. CP3 does his thing. No team owns him. He just gets hurt when it matters most. And that pains me. I hate that's how it happens. And if Chris Paul doesn't win an NBA championship, when I look back on his career, when we all look back on his career, it's going to be one that was ruined by injuries, really and truly. Doesn't matter how good he was. Moving on now, I kind of mentioned James Harden a little bit back in the Chris Paul segment, but James Harden in Philadelphia, that was a thing. Look, I get Ben Simmons has not played with the Brooklyn Nets yet, and maybe it's too early to say this, but can we all agree that at this moment of time, it seems like James Harden, or it seems like the Philadelphia 76ers not only won the James Harden trade, but completely fleeced the Brooklyn Nets? This is insane. The Nets are down bad right now. They're ninth as I'm recording this in the Eastern Conference. The Charlotte Hornets just passed them. Meanwhile, James Harden and the Philadelphia 76ers have risen 2 to 3 spots in the standings in the last 4 games. With James Harden, they're now second in the East, 3 games behind Miami. They lost to Miami without James Harden, of course. They only scored 83 points, I think, in that game, which compared to the regular 126 points that they normally be getting with Harden in the lineup is pretty crazy. But Philadelphia completely won that James Harden trade. They really did. They got rid of Ben Simmons and got James Harden for him. They had to get rid of Seth Curry and a few other guys too. But they got James Harden. And I don't know why, but people forgot who the fuck James Harden was. When Harden was in Brooklyn, people forgot who James Harden is. James Harden in Brooklyn was not James Harden. James Harden in Brooklyn was a guy who was just trying to get an easy NBA championship, let's be real. And he was willing to do whatever it takes. And whatever it took in Brooklyn was him letting Kevin Durant do the scoring. because that's what it takes. All right, Steph Curry had to do the same back in Golden State. You take a back when Kevin Durant joins your basketball team, you take a back seat to him. It doesn't matter who you are. You take a back seat to Kevin Durant if he joins your team, because he is better at scoring than you. He's better at offense than you. He's better at basketball than you. James Harden knows that. And that's why I say James Harden in Brooklyn is not James Harden, because James Harden in Brooklyn would give you 22 points a game. That is not James Harden. That is not the man that we've all known to grow and love, you know. But now we're seeing James Harden in Philadelphia being who James Harden was in Houston, except for now he has not only an all-star caliber center, but an MVP caliber center in Joel Embiid. Before, he was doing crazy things with Clint Capella as his starting center, who I mean no disrespect to. Look what Trae Young's doing with him. But Clint Capella is no Joel Embiid. There's no one else in the league like Joel Embiid. There's no one else in the league that I think fits better with James Harden than Joel Embiid. And that pick and roll game is insane. And what we're seeing James Harden do now is the real James Harden. He's putting up down here, what is it, in the 4 games there, I think it's just under 30 points a game. It's like 26 points a game, 12 assists per game. He's getting the boards, and not only that, but Joel Embiid's been going crazy as well. And this other guy now, Tyrese Maxey, is finding his footing, and I love it because Tyrese Maxey's that third guy that in a playoff game where Joel Embiid and James Harden might not have it going, you need a third guy. You do. Every great NBA team to win an NBA championship has always had that one other guy throughout a playoff run that comes up clutch in games where your stars don't have it going. You know, that was Klay Thompson so much in Golden State. Now, I think Klay Thompson's a star, don't get me wrong, but especially in the KD, Steph Curry days in Golden State, whenever KD and Steph Curry didn't have it going, which wasn't often, but whenever that did happen, I mean, Klay Thompson would give you 45 and just sink dagger after dagger right down your heart. Now, I'm not saying Tyrese Maxey's Klay Thompson level, but Tyrese Maxey is that guy that on the one off night where both James Harden and Joel Embiid don't have it clicking, shit, now I got to deal with Tyrese Maxey, who's 8 of 11 from downtown. Now I got to deal with Tobias Harris, who hasn't missed a corner 3 since game 2 of the first round. You know what I mean? The 76ers have a bunch of other pieces around Harden and Joel Embiid that can get buckets. And then they have this guy named Matisse Thybulle, who is a fucking strap on defense. I mean, it is not even fair how good of an on-ball defender Matisse Thybulle is. And the East, what I love most about the East right now is that, yes, there's a lot of great offensive superpower in the East, but the Eastern Conference is, like, they are loaded with defense. Philadelphia's got a very good defense, I think. I think that Philadelphia, when it comes to it, can play some very good team defense. But that Miami Heat team defense is no joke, man. They can take any player out the game. They really can. I think, Miami and Milwaukee go head-to-head. Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to fight for 25 points a game. He might get 25 points a game in that series. And if he does, it's going to be very, very difficult 25 points a game. He's not going to waltz through the Miami Heat like he did last year in 4 games. That's not going to happen. The Boston Celtics, who I'm going to be talking about in a second here, the Boston Celtics, their defense is insane. They're suffocating defense. Now, it didn't look that way earlier today when I was watching them play against the Brooklyn Nets because, well, Kevin Durant it doesn't matter how good your defense is, he's going to score on you, like he just will. And we've come to know that, and I think Boston can live with that. But I'm going to transition now to the Boston Celtics. All right, we got Philadelphia out of the way. We got Phoenix out of the way. 2 teams that when I look at, I think that they are genuine contenders. And so now I'm going to talk about another team that I think is a genuine contender in the NBA right now, and that is the Boston Celtics. Look, I'm going to go on the record now and say that this narrative that the Boston Celtics are a dark horse team in the Eastern Conference is untrue. The Celtics are not a dark horse team in the East right now. They are a full-fledged contender. The way that Tatum's playing, Jaylen Brown's playing, Marcus Smart's been adding to Al Horford as well. You guys forgot about Al Horford? Al Horford is a positive on any NBA team, especially a contending team. He is a ceiling raiser if I've ever seen one. He will take a good team and put them over the top. He'll take a contending team and put them over the top. He's that one extra piece that teams so badly need in the playoffs. And when I'm watching, Boston's, they're obviously a really hot team right now. They're probably the hottest team in the NBA over the past, month or so. I've already kind of touched on how good their defense has been. Their defense has been historically great recently. And the way that they're climbing the Eastern Conference standings right now, I'm just going to quickly check. I mean, they're a game behind the Chicago Bulls for the 4 seed, so they might even come into the playoffs with home court advantage. At this rate, they might, because Chicago has lost 4 games in a row. I'm just looking at the Eastern Conference, and I'm struggling to see a team that can consistently get, 110, 115 points in a playoff series against the Boston Celtics. That's going to be very difficult to do because Boston can get buckets too. I mean, Jason Tatum, we know. I just saw the man score 54. I've seen Jaylen Brown do crazy things on offense. I think if the Celtics are to struggle, it will be when their stars are missing shots on the offensive side of things. If the Celtics lose in the playoffs, it's not because their defense falls apart. No way. Their defense will be there. Their defense will save them. Their defense will keep them in games. The only time that I see them struggling is when their offense kind of falls apart. And in that case, whatever. It's the Boston Celtics. I don't expect them to win the NBA championship. But, if they make a deep playoff run to the third round of the playoffs, they could probably be... I don't think that they'll get to the finals either. But they're a team that can knock out a genuine contender. They're a team that can knock out the Miami Heat, the 76ers, the Milwaukee Bucks if they get hot during that span of time. That's really my thought on Boston. I think that if you were to let general managers pick, which team do you not want to see in the playoffs right now? If the playoffs started today, what's the team that you would like to see the least in the playoffs? I think Boston's right up there with the Phoenix Suns of the world. Well, Phoenix doesn't have Paul or Booker right now, but Boston might be the most feared team in the NBA right now. They really might. But yeah, that's really it. I mean, it's a bit of a shorter episode this week. We saw some incredible performances. LeBron James, 56 points out of nowhere. I think Nikola Jokic had the best performance of the NBA of the season so far, with 46 points, 12 rebounds, 11 assists, 4 blocks, 3 steals, 3% shooting. 73% shooting, I think, from the field, 60% from downtown. Hit 30 points in the fourth quarter in overtime. Missed 1 shot in that span of time. In my eyes, that's the best performance we're going to see all year, genuinely. And it baffles me that people actually try to tell me that Nikola Jokic is not clutch. People try to tell me that Nikola Jokic is not as clutch as other players who are contending for the MVP right now. That is insane. Stop that. Jokic has been clutch his entire career. Okay, I don't want to start hearing y'all trying to tell me that the reason why he doesn't deserve the MVP is because he's not clutch enough. Please stop with that bullshit. That's some propaganda. I'm not having that and having none of it, actually. But yeah, that's it. That's it for episode 16 of season 3 of the Off the Dome podcast. I've been chilling. Thank you very much for watching this episode, listening to this episode. I appreciate it. And yeah, you know me, feeling good, living better. Drake once said that. Peace out, y'all.